that Devin Nunes had.
Heineken? No, thanks.
We may look back on this day as
its way all the way to the Oval Office. Morning, I'm Martin Savage in for Frederica Whitfield, and we're going to begin.
I think one of the mothers of all conspiracy theories is that somehow the President of the United States would want a country that he doesn't even like, he doesn't want to give foreign aid to have the Ukrainians start an investigation into Biden's.
Also today, we're learning more about another key Trump ally. Documents released late last night show how the White House helped arrange a phone call between Rudy Giuliani and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. That call happened the day after the president's personal lawyer handed over unproven claims about Biden and his son. And then there's this. New details are emerging that the U.S. intelligence officials briefed senators and their aides earlier this fall about Russia's role in pushing a years-long campaign to blame Ukraine for 2016 election meddling. So let's get started with all of this with the reporting now that CNN has originated of these meetings between Nunes and former Ukrainian prosecutor. And for that, we turn to CNN's Marshall Cohen. He's here. And Marshall, what more do we know about this? Because it's pretty shattering stuff.
Martin, there is a chance that this really could make waves as Democrats continue moving forward in the impeachment inquiry. So here's what we know. As you mentioned, the lawyer for this indicted associate of Rudy Giuliani, Lev Parnas, is the Ukrainian-American businessman who was connecting Giuliani with some Ukrainian officials that were offering dirt on the Bidens. As we reported last night, he wasn't just connecting, he didn't just have knowledge of Giuliani's ties to these people. He also is ready to testify that Devin Nunes had a meeting with a man named Viktor Shokin, the former prosecutor general of Ukraine, the top dog in Ukraine for several years until 2016, when he was forced out for not doing enough to crack down on corruption. And because of that, he sort of reemerged now in this saga, offering dirt and information about the Bidens, much of it sketchy, much of it uncorroborated, but it appears that he may have had an audience with Devin Nunes, the ranking member of the Intelligence Committee, who, as you saw in that clip, has been pushing many of these same theories about Joe Biden and his son.
And what's also interesting here, Marshall, is that this isn't the first time that we've seen Nunes play defense for the White House. How's he responding to all of this?
Yeah, you know, from the very start of the Trump presidency, Devin Nunes has been a stalwart ally and defender of the president and has pushed back on so many of these very credible allegations of Russian meddling. Well, CNN tried to get a response from him. He was not cooperative with that. He said that he wouldn't speak to any of our reporters in this lifetime or the next lifetime, which is kind of interesting, but he did give a comment to another outlet overnight saying that it is false that he met with this man, Viktor Shokin. We'll see how this all hashes out. As we said, Lev Parnas is saying that he's willing to say it under oath. So we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. I think it's only just beginning. Marshall Cohen, thanks very much for that. All right, let's turn now to Tara Sonnenschein. She's a former Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs under President Obama. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Martin.
Tara, give us a sense, really, of all of this. How significant would a meeting between the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, meeting with what I guess you would describe as a foreign actor in this capacity, how significant would it actually be?
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to be a little bit of the skunk at the party here because as a journalist, and I know I'm speaking with an esteemed journalist, at least in the old days, we were careful with this kind of information. What are the sources? What are the motivations? And I think we're in a bit of an era of rush to judgment. I think the public is still trying to absorb what happened in the last 2 weeks with these inspiring public officials. So I think, for me at least, Russia, Putin, the blame Ukraine game should really be the top of our agenda, and I would let this one play out. Years ago, although that second shadow foreign policy happened from within the administration, but it reminds me of what happens when there are too many cooks in the foreign policy broth.
We're also learning that the U.S. intelligence officials briefed members of Congress, I believe it's members of the Senate in recent weeks, about Russia's involvement in pushing the Ukraine meddling conspiracy. As someone who's worked with the White House, does it surprise you that such a conspiracy seemed to make its way all the way to the Oval Office.
This is the central question that I hope we focus on in the next few weeks. There used to be a bipartisan consensus in this country about Putin and Russia. We needed to find our interests with Russia and work on those, but never, ever doubt the global chess master, Vladimir Putin, ex-KGB, smarter than all of us. It is no surprise that he would have figured out ways to insert himself into this process. Fiona Hill will turn out to be one of the most important witnesses. She said publicly what you're now asking me about that happened privately after that testimony.
Well, the fact that you bring her up, let's turn to the soundbite, actually, because several Republicans involved in the impeachment hearings have even pushed this Ukraine meddling conspiracy this week. And as you mentioned, here's what President Trump's former top Russia advisor had to say about those claims. We'll listen.
Some of you on this committee appear to believe that Russia and its security services did not conduct a campaign against our country, and that perhaps, somehow, for some reason, Ukraine did. This is a fictional narrative that has been perpetrated and propagated by the Russian security services themselves.
Tara, she is saying that essentially members of Congress, or at least some of them, are playing right into Vladimir Putin's hands.
She is actually saying, if you look back, Martin, at what George Washington warned us about in his inaugural speech. He said, beware of the foreign meddlers. At that point, it was Europe and the British. But he warned our country of three things. Beware of outside influence, go for the public good, and lastly, he said, truth will always, in the end, win, but the pains will be there for us to get there.
It's actually a very telling statement about the pains of today. Tara Sonnenschein, so good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
And to you. Thank you. There is much more ahead. The White House, how it arranged the phone call between Rudy Giuliani and Secretary Pompeo. CNN now has new emails linking them to a plot to smear former Vice President Joe Biden. Plus, former National Security Advisor John Bolton is again teasing he has a lot to say, announcing today that he's formed a political PAC and a whole lot more. We'll talk about that next.
Mortgage loan isn't.
He is tweeting again 1 day after he said his Twitter account was liberated from unfair White House suppression.